apologize. We only have one speaker left for the day. I can say that he is actually a regular in the Moodlemoot Philippines for the past years because of his expertise in his field and in presenting. So without further ado, our last speaker is a professor of Graduate School of Education at Arellano University. He is an educational management specialist and curriculum development guru, a dynamic international conference speaker, a professional training facilitator, and a faculty development consultant. He is a board member of the International Network for Outcome-Based Education. Aside from being a Graduate School of Education professor, he is a school administrator, author, and a co-author of several professional books and textbooks. He has over 20 years of teaching, research, and maintains several university adjunct positions in the Philippines, Australia, United Kingdom, and Mexico. So ladies and gentlemen, to give a talk on an inverted learning pyramid for designing your best instructional learning management system, a round of applause please for Dr. Elias Sampa.
Good afternoon, and congratulations for being here. It's quite an accomplishment, right? Yeah. So I remember that the last time we were together, it was virtual. So it was kind of a different feeling to encounter people, you know, and see our faces again. Yeah, I think it's not. It's a unique feeling. It's a unique experience. But at the same time, I think it also provides a challenge for Moodle specialists. How do you replicate this in a virtual environment? So that's the challenge that we have. Yeah, so thank you. May I borrow another microphone? Oh yeah, there we go. Oh yeah, it works. Okay, so what I'm going to do this time is to try to somehow address some of your concerns. Not all, just some of your concerns. When I was listening to the activities this morning, I heard some people expressing issues like, how do we ensure that these wonderfully designed learning platforms are being fully utilized, that people are really learning? Right? How do we ensure that? Especially for professional development, mainly for organizations that want to improve the performance of their workers, you know, or maybe introduce new patterns, and which they want everybody to adjust to. So this has become a fundamental option for them to scale, you know, access to trainings. But yes, so we're still facing that challenge of how do we ensure that people are really using it. So, my wife whispered to me earlier, she said, you know, actually, it seems that what we are getting here offers better guarantee than the textbooks that we have used over time. Because there's no way to know if the textbook has been opened by the students, right? You can't tell, right? It doesn't matter how expensive, how beautiful they are, we can't guarantee if the students are using the textbooks. But of course I know these designs that we have now can tell you precisely how often students are visiting the site, what they are doing. It gives you a lot of that ability, which is very good. But then we have also experienced issues of, problem of some students can't just afford a computer accessibility. Sometimes they have computer, but they don't have connectivity. The internet is very poor, something of that type. So we are just beginning. And I'm so glad to hear that we are talking about 4.2. That's very impressive, right? It means this progress is happening, right? So we are trying to catch up and perfect the system. Okay. So what I'll try to do here is to provide you just one of those tools that probably can help you as individuals to work around what we're trying to do as trainers and educators. So this is a very basic description of what a learning management system is, very much what we're using. Remember, in all of this, our main objective is actually to secure learning success for our learners. Whether we're talking about employees in a company who have to become more sophisticated, or maybe they can improve their performance in one way, so you organize some training to capacitate them. That's what we're designing. So it's not just to disseminate some information. That's not the point. It's not to make information accessible. That's not the point. Because even if people have information on their mobile phone, right, they can still remain incompetent. We know that, right? So it's not accessibility. Although this provides accessibility and mobility. And so you can be anywhere, you can still have access. But how do we convert access into transformation? How do we ensure that people are really getting better, sophisticated? So, you want to be clear with the learning outcomes. That's really the first thing that you want to be. In other words, for companies and businesses, organizations, one way that help them to think about what we call training needs assessment. That word used to be something, a big word, 20 years ago. But what we did when we say learning needs assessment, especially in schools, we would pass a piece of paper and ask people, what do you want? And so people are going to put down whatever they were interested in. And then the team involved in organizing a training, they are going to say, okay, I think majority of them said this, so let's have a training on this. And so we designed the trainings and then we rendered trainings. And at the end of the day, we produced many certificates of attendance and certificates of, disappearance in some cases, because people come and take pictures, sign up, and then they get a certificate at the end, And then we're expecting reality to change down there, whether we're talking about our students or employees to perform better. I think there was something wrong with that kind of approach. A smarter way to do that actually is to use your key performance indicators. You really need to know what exactly do we want our workers or our people to perform in terms of their professional responsibilities. So if you are going to gauge if they are operating at this level and you want to upscale, whether it's your productivity or the quality of what you produce, you should be able to analyze how much more can we go. Is training the appropriate stuff? Because training oftentimes becomes like an excuse for everything, right? And that's why sometimes we feel frustrated. Oh my gosh, I've been doing these trainings, people are not changing. Well, sometimes it's not the training you need. Change management may require sometimes changing technology that you use, or maybe different activities that you do in the organization. But when we are able to articulate that, yeah, it's really the training we need, because we want every person to improve their capacity from point C to point B or maybe point A, then you become more specific. You are very clear with what exactly you want. And you can quantify or describe. There should be a way of telling where people were before the training and where they have become after the training in terms of performance. And I will tell you, nobody will manipulate that, right? If it's just awareness, for example, awareness campaign, fantastic. But if you're talking about changing people's behavior or performance, nobody can cheat. There's no cheating there. No, there's no cheating. Because people have to perform. No, last year your performance was at 75%, it still remains 75%, you did not improve. And then you can make people more accountable, right? Because trainings are expensive. Okay? Education is expensive. So if we really want to make the most out of the investments that we are putting in education, we really need to be very clear with what kind of outcomes we want really, and how can we agree in terms of description of what they will look like. So I'm talking about providing a theoretical model, which may inform some of the choices of outcomes to focus on, and your effort to curate those outcomes, as well as working with inputs and outputs that may help you. So, as I said, learning is really about transformation, and transformation implies two things. You are expanding learners' capabilities, abilities, and characteristics, which is not the same as simply increasing the amount of information they need, because Google can do that. Okay? But you want to expand their capabilities. You should be able to say, mas magaling sila. Ngayon maganda talaga yung performance nila. Wow! Okay? You should be able to see that. It's change you are asking. It's not information. Who cares how much information you have, right? People care about what you perform, what you can do with what you know, right? So the world is changing. The second thing is unleashing unrealized or unrecognized potential. Because when you look at people that we are working with, or the students that we are trying to develop, we really are not very sure what they are capable of. If in case they were fully developed, we are not so sure. But by committing to help them unleash that potential in them, that's part of what transformation looks like. And I think all of us, particularly those coming from the schools, you can see what a student look like in first year and see them in fourth year, and then you say, oh my goodness, this guy has changed a lot. That's transformation. Okay? And so, instructional learning designers are really concerned with facilitating the attainment of these two things. So logically, three questions come to point. So the first one is, what kind of human beings we want our learners to become? So that is in terms of their transferable personal capabilities, abilities, characteristics, as well as their unleashed potential. So we call those things as performance outcomes when we use a bit of pretentious language, you know. In the academy, we are very good at coining words. Okay, and so we coin words so that we can sound very intelligent, you know, but actually it's a very simple thing we are saying, you know. If you're going to talk to people, you know, ordinarily, when you see this little kid, sometimes they can't walk, they are too young to walk. The next time you see them, they are running around. That is transformation. Okay, this is so complicated. But educationally, training-wise, we need to visualize what we want to happen to people who are undergoing training. They have to somehow increase their abilities. And we are using the word transferable because it's not an activity you do at one point. It's a quality you develop. For example, the moment you know how to repair a car, maybe a Toyota, you can also repair any other car. It's transferable. So it's not confined to where you are getting the training, but it actually becomes transferable. It can be used on demand. So the second point is, how do we facilitate transformation of the learners? So this has to do with the framing of appropriate pedagogy. So this is typically the interplay among the inputs, instructional inputs, processes, and the outputs that you'll be utilizing. And thirdly is thinking about the resources. What resources do we need? And these resources are not given. You have to do a lot of tweaking. You have to do a lot of reworking things around. You have to really work on this. So you have to, in order for these resources to really become effective for you and support your efficiency. So to achieve the outcomes, there is a lot of work that goes into whether we're talking about the technology, content, activities, and even the type of teachers or instructors that you may be needing. Okay. So that first question begs defining performance outcomes for all learning design. So your performance outcomes are basically just statements of abilities that your graduates or participants in a training are going to develop after being immersed in a training session. This is what they'll be capable of doing. Defining your performance outcomes enable clear communication of expectations to stakeholders. I think one of the issues I heard that came up was the idea of how do we guarantee authenticity of what our students are doing or submitting. That question will tell you that it has something to do with what expectations you have created. Because students, in my view, are the ones undergoing education. We are just facilitating. If the expectations are clearly defined and it's what invited them to come to school, there should be no room for them to cheat their teachers because they're cheating themselves. Right? So I'm not going to spend my time trying to protect myself from being cheated by the students, right? Because they're the ones who are losers, right? They'll be the losers, right? Would you imagine you invest so much in the training and then you begin to cheat your instructors? What are you getting out of that? It doesn't make sense. So we really need to ensure that our outcomes become something of communicable, that when we're talking to our students, you don't need to use punishments and trades and all sorts of stuff. You're going to fail the exam and you die, whatever it is, You just have to have them understand what it means to be potentially competent. And let that be the driving force for them. Let them, when they feel like going to school or waking up in the morning, they need to be motivated. Not by your threats, that's outdated, It's by the desire to become a better person, a more competent person, because it pays to do so, right? So performance outcome also provides students with vocabulary to talk about themselves. They should be able to say, I am very competent in this, in that, I can do this, I can do that. I love the preschool kids. When the preschool kids come from their schools, they can brag about what they're capable of doing to their parents. I can draw. You see? The word draw is a verb. It means it's a word that we normally can use in describing our outcomes. Ability to draw. So a preschooler can proudly brag about becoming competent in terms of drawing. Okay? But when you ask many of our college students, tell me, what are you good in? What are you capable of? Especially when the employers, HR people are trying to interview them. They are like, I'm done with high school and I'm in a great university, it's a top university, fine, but I don't care about the top university and your high school. I just need to hire someone who's competent, okay? Okay. So our students are not provided with the language to describe their capacity, their capabilities, how smart they are, how much they can contribute to value. Okay? So that's why we need to use these performance outcomes, create healthy and predictable learning environment that respect and nurture students' diversity, as well as their rates of learning. So performance outcomes are used also for organizational or institutional self-reflection, self-evaluation, and quality control as well, quality assurance. Because when you are clear with what type of people you want to develop, and at some point you are not seeing those evidences, that help you to think, what should we tweak, what should we do, how do we organize? Right? So we need to be very clear with that. Now, I want to make use of this, which was a definition of an outcome that was made by one of my colleagues in the team, outcome-based education, Dr. William Spady. So he defined an outcome as a culminating demonstration of learning. So we are talking about abilities, what abilities people develop over time. And abilities require action. This type of abilities require action. You perform it. If you become a writer, you need to write. That means you're performing the writing. If you become a reader, you read. That means you are performing the action. If you become a dancer, you have to dance. That's how you, that's how you perform, right? It's not taking a multiple choice exam. That's the point I'm trying to drive here, right? You can't measure human ability by giving you multiple choice questions. That's information, right? It's just kind of cognitive information. Competent people perform their competencies. Our guys who are taking a video, I'm sure that I'm looking very nice in the video. They are very competent, right? So they are performing it, right? They are performing it. If they are not, the moment you are going to watch that video, you see half of my head on the other one, or off tangent. So these people are competent and they are demonstrating their competence. They are performing it. And yes, all the people are in. So the lunch we had was a fantastic lunch. Those are the performances of people who are competent and they are delivering on their competencies. Right? So people have to be competent, and therefore competence or the outcome transcends the instructional period. So we're not talking about what the student did in class, what they submitted or did not submit. We're actually talking about people becoming competent. So for educational training outcomes drive the educational undertaking. So such as we want to upskill a workplace, or maybe developing a new set of skills for our young people in college or maybe senior high school. And when we think about basic education or early childhood education, what we are now provided under the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, is that we want to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning in all learners. Because this is what good life looks like. When more people are included and more people are functional, more people can participate in the economy. That's the hope. And we are hoping that education can do that. So in the most recent history of learning, this is now I'm going back to the topic of the presentation. In the most recent history of learning, designing, we have benefited from the works of Bloom and colleagues in the 1956. It has been evolving, so we see quite a lot of its influence in our thinking about designing, particularly in terms of thinking about outcomes. So our embedded learning pyramid proceed from that work. This is the Bloom's, the work of Bloom and the team in 1956. I'll just highlight a few things here that are worthy mentioning. So they developed the categories. So there are 6 categories that we see here that include knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. We use this language a lot, right? When you are planning trainings or you are planning you're doing a course design or subject design, you use a lot of this. So, usually this is how they are illustrated, right? So knowledge is assumed to be the foundation upon which the other cognitive capabilities can be executed. So you have understanding, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. If you look at the words, you see they are all nouns. That's how the original 1956 was designed. Now, in 2001, after many years of trying to work with this, tweaking it, and trying to make it relevant to our contemporary ways of designing or expectations of the educated people, just to put in something here, I want to say, much of the educational ethos up to 1980s, 1950s, education was seen more, because it was designed along the language of assembly lines, industrial patterns, industrial evolution. So it has been, all of these things were kind of formulated with that background in mind. But since in the post-war and most recent, what UNESCO and other organizations have been pushing is really a shift away from the banking model of learning to a model of education where we are thinking about capacitating people. Education as empowerment, not collection of information, but empowerment. So it's not about inputs, but more about outcomes. It's really about how can a person become better vision. So with this work of these guys, they did something. They gave us the verbs. So if you remember, now the first one become remember. We have understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and on top there they change things. So they use the word create. So why create? Because the highest level of human development in the cognitive space is the ability to create. So you're talking about producing something, you're talking about adding value to something. So if people have to be rewarded for something so much in life out of their work, usually the focus is on their contributions, what their creativity, what have they added to what other people have done. So creativity remains to be now something that we are looking at when we are emphasizing our designs, our training. So now the create and evaluate become on top when we think about educational outcomes. So what has changed? I wanted to show you just briefly this one. I didn't create this, but unfortunately, I haven't put the acknowledgement of where I got this. It's coming from Google, but it's accurate. That's why I adapted it. So in 1956, what you see on top is evaluate. Down there you see knowledge. It's nouns that are used. We move to use the verbs, which describe performance. So what are you capable of performing? It's answering performance. And then I'm looking at what has not changed. What has not changed? Two things. The metaphor of climbing a mountain. Okay? It's like you're going up. So it is, when you're looking at it, although educators are going to contest this, because they're going to tell me, wait a minute, but every time we teach, we do not move that way, we teach everything, right? That's correct, it's true. But here I'm talking about the representation. It gives you the sense that you start with remembering and then you go up and up. So there's a sense of the apex in educational attainment. And then the second one is lower levels have more emphasis affecting the distribution of educational resource. So we invest more down here. We are really investing more here, down here. A lot of designs, especially when we are looking at assessments. Many of our assessments are assessing information. They are trying to operate on this side. You rarely find good assessments that are here, are pitched on top here. Okay? So that's what has happened. So what I have done is really to break that structure and provide you something that you can work with in practical terms. You notice that many designs we are going to look at on the taxonomy, they are very heavy down here. So they do a lot of remembering stuff, a lot of information stuff. Okay? A lot. And then when you go up there, it becomes less a concern. If you just want to look at many assessments that we have, even among the best designers of assessment, a lot of it is information, right? They are not assessing what the industry is looking for. They are not asking a question, are students really competent, are they creative? They're not asking for those things. They are more capturing this stuff. Well, I was a very good test taker. There are many exams that I passed, but I can't remember anything out of it. First of all, I got a perfect scores in Latin. But if you ask me to say something in Latin, I'll tell you because you know. So when we talk about these things down here, we can master them, but they fade away very quickly. Like information fade away. If it doesn't fade, it becomes obsolete. Because whatever we are talking about today, 5 years later, it's not going to be the latest information. It's going to be obsolete. So, but the higher things there, they become abilities that we need to live with and perform with. So this is what I did under the embedded learning. You're going to see that the structure, the logic of words has not changed. I could have done that, but I didn't see the value of reinventing the wheel. You start to make use of what is already available, right? So what we have there is to assuming more, taking more in our designing process that most of what we are considering as outcomes, we pitch them to that level of create. You do less on the lower side. Some of the best assessments I've seen, for example, in my work with organizations and schools, you don't get a high mark for scoring anything that is just passed on to you. Something like, I give you this information as a teacher, and then at the end of it, I say, okay, what did I tell you? And then the student will raise their hand and they're going to recite, okay? And then you say perfect score. We don't need to get a mark for simply reciting stuff, because you are just mimicking like a parrot. But people need to be encouraged to really transcend. When they begin to create, that's where value comes. And that's where we get the most out of ourselves. So if you have to be looking at the comparison here, so you're going to see nothing has changed in terms of the ordering, but those numbers have moved. I mean, the structure of it and where you put more emphasis and the justification for this. I'll show you what I have put together. If you're going to scale the quality of outcomes, those things like remembering, understanding, they're actually very low. They're very low. If the more you move towards here, the more your outcomes become more value-laden. They become really much more like contributors. I'm sure all of you in the organization, you really appreciate people who are creative. You really appreciate people who can evaluate, exercising those type of qualities. And that is really the fact. So innovators, inventors, and generators, they get more from the value that is just scattered all over. But when they're able to function within the create space and expand that, we get innovations, we get generative ideas and solutions, and great things happen. So the green leads to intellectual consumerism and consumer attitude. You remember everything, I've read everything, I know everything, fine, but we're just a consumer, okay? Blue leads to intellectual productivity and producer attitude. So what I'm trying to say here, there is a big difference. The moment you begin to emphasize your outcomes, pitch it to the create stage, you're going to have value coming up. You're going to achieve more, accomplish more in human success. So Henry Ford tells us success does not come by imitation. So, what an invented learning pyramid for designing your best instructional learning management system brings. One is start your design by defining the outcomes, which we call the non-negotiables for all learners, utilizing the verbs, those verbs. What human abilities, qualities, characteristics, all of these things that you want, be clear with that. As you design, it's very tempting to use information and throw all sorts of information in our design. But it's important to stop and say, wait a minute, what exactly do you want these people to develop as capabilities? Very often I've seen, when I look at, I'm evaluating outcomes in some courses offered in universities, I realize one pattern, like designers have tended to combine micro skills and the macro skills. Outcomes speak to the macro. It's that attainment of the highest quality that you're going to develop. But the things or the steps that you're going to take to get there, they are really left on the instructional activities. You don't see them in the outcomes, right? When you say, I want to go to Baguio, that's an outcome, right? The question now, how do you get to Baguio? That becomes the business of planning and executing your trip. But what's important is you're going to Baguio. So the outcomes are really set very much on that point. If you pitch your outcomes to the verb create, you're talking about innovating, building, generate, invent, produce. Those things make a big difference. It really changes human beings. And by the way, when you're looking at, I was talking about extracting your learning needs assessment from the actual key performance indicators in your organization, you're going to notice that, well, we are not happy with what's happening in the marketing or maybe in the sales. They're underperforming. The question is, how much do you want them to improve? If you're going to say by 6%, the next question is, how do we go about it? You can measure that down the line. You're going to see that people have changed because the numbers will change. The performance will change. And typically, when you tell people, can you come up with creative ideas on how to do sales? They are not going to be giving you old failed ideas. They are going to be giving you some creative solutions, right? And naturally, you increase the chances of performing better as an organization. So it matters a lot to think this way. We can develop human beings, from inside out. So that is towards unleashing and expanding their inner unlimited potential. Yes, the lower levels in the outcomes, as if you are starting with bloom as your initial starting point, some of those things may be needed, but they are temporary, they are minimal. What matters most are these high things that people can do with their with themselves that can create and add value. So if guys, this is a secret. If you want to be promoted wherever you work, add value. Just by being very good at attendance, showing up every day, you are really there, very faithful. It's not enough. You want to be promoted, add value. Think about value, okay? Because your boss will always think about you in terms of value you add. Not in terms of your being faithful in reporting for work. Showing up every single day, rain, sunshine, you are there. My typhoon, Nanjanga. Okay, good banners. But really what really makes a big difference is, can you add value? And unfortunately, in our educational systems, we haven't developed our students very much to think in terms of value creators. Because we have trained them to think in terms of imitation, remembering, understanding, applying other people's ideas. Okay? So, try to design with a focus on create and expand that space. I'm not saying it has to be stuck on 31, you can make it 50%, you can make it 80%, it will make your work better. Make this embedded learning pyramid your indispensable guide in designing your best learning management system, and then avoid the digitization of educational failing. I'm feeling a bit of this time and again that some comments that are coming from well-intentioned educators who are using powerful resources we have like Moodles, they will say, our students are cheating too much and we are tired of them cheating. Okay? So my answer is, you are replicating the problems of traditional education. If an assessment is easy to cheat, or you can cheat with it, it means it's not a quality assessment. A good assessment, you can't cheat. I think all of you have experienced a situation where your professor says, take the exam with open books and open notes, right? It's very authentic. It's very hard to cheat. I'm talking about training people in organizations, right? So I entered the organization, and everybody doesn't know how to use a computer. Our outcome, by the end of this course, everybody should be able to use a computer. You know what we need to do? As individually, everybody use a computer. You can see, and your assessment is very authentic, 100%. Nobody can cheat. Okay? So the only thing you cheat are actually not valid assessments. Okay? They are manipulated, things that you can manipulate. By the way, I just renewed my license in the Philippines, driver's license, and I got 100%. You can Google that on LTO. I got 100%, okay? You think that I know, where is the position of, the placa for the motorbike, and, these are stuff that even if I know them, it doesn't make me a good driver, okay? It has nothing to do with me being a good driver. But the fact that it says 100%, in the eyes of LTO, I am one of the best drivers this country has. Try to drive with me. You might go crazy. I'm not. Okay? But that's a problem when our assessments are so easy to manipulate because they are not really measuring human abilities, they're measuring information. You are not going to generate the people that you need. So you need to avoid. Those are the problems of traditional education. One size fits all. We don't know how to differentiate assessment. We don't know how to be patient enough to assess every outcome according to the dictates that it requires. Just think about this. If you were training someone to dance, there is a way of assessing dancing. If you were training someone to paint, There is a way of assessing painting. They are not identical, so there's no universal way of assessing. Every assessment comes with its own intrinsic formula of taking a look at validating learning. But our traditional schools, because they are too big as systems, we have tended to use shortcuts. So we do things that are convenient for the sake of making sure we have a basis for promoting or for graduating our students. But the moment we step in the workplace, people are frustrated because they realize that the boss immediately starts talking about key performance indicators. Okay, if you cannot meet these targets, you are fired. Because the schools are not teaching, so they are shocked. What? No, you need to perform. There are key performance indicators. Valid ways of saying that one is competent and is delivering according to the competences. It's very straightforward. Yeah. So the reason why we are experiencing many problems that you are facing is because the assessments we are using, they are traditional stuff that never worked even in the traditional education. Some of us who were good at manipulating it, we got where we are today. Because we were good at manipulating it, you know. It's not because we were the smartest. Okay? But if you are going to life, which is a real assessment, you can't get away with it. There is no plagiarism. Okay? And I've taught some courses where I say, use AI. AI can help you to get information you need. And can help you to like write something within 50 words, you can get anything you want. But if I'm going to be asking students to simply pass on what they know, they're going to cheat. But if I'm going to ask them, how do you apply a concept like this? Now I'm sending you, go to AI, go to Google, get whatever it is, I'm interested in your application. It's difficult to cheat. Because I'm asking them to perform competence. I'm not asking them to give me information about competence. Okay. So we need to really do something about that. So when learning management systems is designed with this embedded learning pyramid, I can assure you, it can help educators, trainers, and learners guarantee the meeting of superior learning outcomes. And therefore, excellence, personalization, and ownership. So thank you very much. For further conversation, we can continue. So if there is a question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elias Sampa, for once again giving a dynamic, energetic, and educational talk. So for those who have questions, once again, the floor is open for your questions. Yes, sir? Please approach the mic.
Good afternoon again, ma'am and sirs. I'm old, but I'm very, I really like the lecture of our speaker here and about this learning pyramid. However, as you can see, the pyramid figure is a little bit unstable. Imagine that you put the pyramid standing on its head and it will fall. Okay. So, sir, how about if instead of a pyramid, we're going to make a rectangle? It's more stable. That means to say that Newton's law of motion, equal reaction from the, you get a reaction from the whatever, reaction to the action that we have. Okay, I think we cannot create more if we only have to have a little knowledge, something like that. It's only my opinion, but I think they're more brighter than me. But the thing is, why not make it, somewhat like instead of a triangle, we make it rectangle. So more knowledge, we can create more, and so on and so forth. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate that. That would be quite interesting. The triangle would be much, the Egyptians taught us the idea of using triangles, and triangles have been very phenomenal in many of our designs today. Okay? Yeah, but we can try any other way of presenting it, right? That would be good. The point I wanted to raise here is, when you are, let me just be practical. Do you guys have all of this? You have this book, right? Okay, let me just walk you very quickly. Go to, take a look at page very, very beginning. Yeah. Okay, we are doing this as designers, okay? So we are looking at this as designers. So, Moodle, forgive me, I'm going to use the case you have, okay? Don't kick me out. I love you. Okay, so let's take a look at the Moodle site administration. It's page 6. Just to give you an example. In designing, there's what we call, the use of words have evolved a lot. We use the word objective to refer to what you do as an educator, as a trainer, and outcome to refer to what a person will become, right? So Moodle has done a very good job there by saying, this is a 3-hour workshop intended for Moodle LMS administrators and system administrators who want to have adequate skills and knowledge on Moodle. Can you see that? Yeah. And then down the line, you're going to see at the end of the workshop, the participants will be able to, 1, install Moodle LMS on their local devices, apply basic Moodle site configurations on a newly installed Moodle, and then you have 3 and 4, which deals with discussion. So you notice that the discussion part is dealing with information, right? It has to do with the information, what we are discussing. But when you think about the install and the apply, they are actually directly linked to the purpose of the training. We want you to install, so install it, right? They become more powerful in terms of your expectations from your student or from your trainees. What will happen to them? What capabilities are they going to have? Take a look at the next one, Moodle for course creators. It also has words like, this is a 3-hour workshop intended for educators, course creators, and instructional designers who would like to build their course in Moodle learning. You see, it uses the word to build. It's not to become aware. It's not to be familiar with. It says to build, right? So naturally, if you are using those words in your educational undertaking, I tell you, your graduates will be more sophisticated than someone who's going to be attending for the sake of becoming aware of the elements of Moodle. Now, becoming aware is fantastic. You need that as part of what will help you to become a good builder. But we also know, I experience, maybe you also have this experience, living in New Manila. One time I had a problem with my computer. So naturally, I went to Gilmer and they asked the technician, oh, I don't know, my computer can't start. It's a brand new one. So the guy, I said, what do you think is wrong with it? He was looking at me. He couldn't explain a simple thing. But he fixed the computer and gave it back to me. Try it. It works. That's what I mean. So you cannot assume that having knowledge in terms of explicit knowledge is equals to capacity to actually perform the outcome. In this case, repair. I didn't go there to test his knowledge of computers. I went there to have my computer repaired. So if you are talking about outcomes that are really very, very specific and linked to the abilities we want people to develop, I will tell you, you get better results. Much of what you are doing, you can actually, even your instructional strategies, the kind of activities you do with your people you are training with, they will be more directed towards that word. So the next one gives us now, what we have here is, it's about designing. So you see, number 3 says create a sandbox course and enroll participants in a course. That's really what it's all about. That's what it is, right? If you can do that, we have done our job, right? Which is not the same. If we are going to add anything else that we're going to put here, becomes simply information that we normally forget professionally. We don't remember much information. First of all, information change. These guys are telling us that now they are giving us 4.2. Am I getting it right? What has happened? Things have changed. They have modified. So information changed. But once you are competent, you can create. As new information comes up, you are going to be expanding what you do as well. That's a big difference. So I'm not saying that, oh yeah, knowledge is, but do not get comfort in the information alone, but make information as part of your process. not really the outcome that you want to achieve. It makes a big difference. The last one I saw on page 7 is also very, very interesting in the Moodle designers, Moodle team. What they're saying is this 3-hour workshop is intended for all participants interested in increasing and learning more about H5P, its features, content type, categories. What I realized when I was looking at this is that they under-promise, but they over-delivered. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed that? Because what have they delivered? In their delivery, they said, determine the requirements, discuss H5P, identify the H5P. The last fourth one says, develop interactive content. That is very higher than what they promised. Their promise was very simple. They just said, okay, interested to increase and become more, interested in creating and learning more about. So they didn't make a commitment to make sure that people develop. So I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is very interesting. They under-promised in terms of how they articulated the objective of the training. But then when you look at the outcomes, what they expected their participants to develop in themselves was far much higher, right? So what do I mean here? If I have to, delete 1, 2, I can remain with 3 and 4, I'll still be able to bring people to 4. So the information just becomes part of what we do in order to capacitate. Just like, when you are training a person to drive, you can differentiate the information you are using, You can differentiate the directions you go today, Kanan, Kalewa, whatever. But what matters is the person is able to drive. So when we promise, those major statements we put in our designs, if we pitch them to the highest level in the taxonomy, we do better. Actually, the expectations you are setting for people who are training and who are going through whatever educational design you have will be different. The mentality is different. The mentality of becoming aware is not the mentality of becoming a creator. I noticed when I conduct all these trainings, so you mean to say we are going to do that? Oh yes, we are going to do it. Actually, when you promise that they are going to become competent, you create a motivation for them to strive towards achieving that. The information becomes just something they will be using for the sake of becoming. All the knowledge stuff, they just become something they will strive for because it will help them to achieve becoming competent. Set to a standard of produce or create. So that's really the message of this, and I do hope that, you take time to reflect about it. If it doesn't work, let me know. But I'm confident it will help you a lot. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elisabel, for the in-depth answer. Last question, sir. Yes.
Hi, good afternoon, Dr. Santa. I observed on your inverted pyramid, you distributed the 100% from 3, 8, 14, 19, 25, and 31. Is there any statistical reference you conducted or study you conducted for you to come up with those numbers? Because if I remember it correct, on the Dale Cone of Experience, some scholars put percentage on the Dale Cone of Experience, but many refuted it because Dale himself did not put a percentage on it. Is there any method you use for you to come up with those numbers?
Thank you very much. Yes, I did a comprehensive analysis of the models that are existing. And so that's how we generated that, the numbers. And you are very quick with your math. Very competent in your math, yes. You checked it. Actually, I was not aware that it would come up to that. It just came a last realization that when the numbers came out, they added up to 100. But there was no kind of like starting with an approach that requires to bring to 100. So I really appreciate that you noticed it. Thank you so much. But it's not the point. Let me also illustrate here. I think what you get there as an illustration is the idea that in our school system, in our educational system, we are investing so much money and time on those other outcomes. If you really look at many of our assessment systems we are using all over the world, it's not just about the Philippines, they tend to be very heavy on those elements. Actually, if you do mathematical analysis, like one system that is used in IGCS and in IB, they assign value to when they ask a task to students to answer, right? So they will ask examiners how to give scores, how to grade the students. They tend to provide those tentative numbers on how you can score them. And they tend to give high value to that. But there's a degree of consistency that you're going to find in many of these when you look at these as assessments, that there's a dimension where they're putting much emphasis on that one. Unfortunately, when we say paper one, in most of these exams, paper one is multiple choice, almost always. So if it's multiple choice, it doesn't matter how well you design it, it's really information. So at the end of everything, when you consolidate that and do statistical moderation, the person with more information is likely to score higher than the creative person. That's how it works. So I'm looking at the modality, for example, used in Australia now, Western Australia and Victoria, for senior high school. It has that problem, and they haven't yet settled out how to deal with it. They have done some measures that help to eliminate a bit of that and to emphasize the higher level outcomes. But the issue is, when you are trying to assess things like create, it's not the same as a multiple choice question. Which one is wrong, A or B? That tends to be more practical, and people feel like they find comfort in the feeling that we are fair enough. Everybody is receiving the same. But if you go up to assess those qualities like ability to evaluate or ability to create, educators become very much divided in terms of how much do you score. So you find out that if there are two professors involved in grading, one will give 5, the other one will give 3. And then you have a whole fight to justify why you give a 3, why not a 4. I think it's a healthy conversation. I think that's good. It's better than feeling confident that, yes, multiple choice tells us, kung tama yung sagot, tama talaga yung sagot. It gives you a sense of feeling, but you are not defining highly competent human beings who can perform their outcomes in a way that they're really competent. It doesn't give you much guarantees. So thank you very much, sir, for that. I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Elias Sampa. So at this point, I'd like to invite Mr. Max Espy to please join me on stage and present the Certificate of Appreciation, which reads, Web Technology Incorporated presents the Certificate of Appreciation to Dr. Elias Sampa in grateful recognition of sharing his invaluable knowledge and experience to the participants of the Moodlemoot Philippines 2023, given the 6th day of July 2023, held at Century Park Hotel, Manila. Signed by Ms. Cheryl R. Villaroman, President and CEO of the Web Technology Incorporated. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause please for Dr. Elias Sampa.